very thoughtful in their planning and very flexible as well. They know what they're doing in front of the class and they have a plan, but they're also able to really think on their feet and change gears in response to their students. If a lesson's going well, they go with it. If it's not going well, they may change midstream. I see teachers who really know the content and also love what they do and who take on challenges. If science isn't my strength, I'm going to put even more effort there to learn that information and get my students excited about it, because that's what I need to convey, that enthusiasm.
Okay.
I am in an island called Praia.
I am in an island, or I am from an island?
I'm from an island called Praia, a nice place in Cape Verde that I always visit.
That's beautiful. Okay, change I am to I am. There are a number of characteristics of a good or effective teacher, to my mind. And the first one really has to do with, the old stereotype of the loving, caring teacher. And if that is absolutely the foundation of what needs to happen in the classroom, again, to refer to the brain research, as we know more and more about neuroscience and the connection between the brain and learning and emotions, that caring, loving teacher who makes the kids feel good about themselves, who makes the kids feel safe, that's the basis of good teaching.
The teacher also needs, for competence, another set of skills, what I call emotional intelligence. That is, the ability to understand children, understand parents, work well with colleagues, because in reality, those are the kinds of things that add strength and power to content knowledge. So an effective teacher is able to do both.
And what I did is I took some copper 2 sulfate and I dissolved it in water. And I want you to tell me which of these is the most concentrated. The way I would define effective teaching is, number one, knowing your students. And that involves several different things. First, knowing them as people, but particularly knowing them as, where are they intellectually? What's their background in terms of, have they learned the math that they need to solve the problems? And when I'm teaching my honors class, I just make certain assumptions that they can just solve. If I say divide this by this, they can just do it. But with the lower level classes, I go through step by step. We do this, we divide by this. I go into a lot more depth. So knowing your students is a very critical component, knowing what their capabilities are. And if you've got all that, the trying to work out all the details with the discipline, working all this stuff out, that will all come. And you can be a very successful teacher.
They were lost because they were negatively impacted by the changes of the 1920s. They thought the growing consumerism and materialism were negative changes.
What I think is helpful for pre-teachers to know about effective teaching and learning practices would be that research has told us over the years that the number one thing that's going to make a difference is having competent teachers who are really competent in whatever subject or whatever developmental age that they're working with. That is the key.
In the Soviet Union, you have China, okay? There becomes a fear in the United States that we're going to have expansion in Asia. It becomes what's called the domino effect. I think an effective teacher is one that cares about his students, cares about how the growth of the students, but also is not one that's immersed in just the subject matter. There's a joke that a lot of the teachers have, is that we feel like we could probably be professors because we just love the topic. And sometimes we do get so involved in the topic that we forget that we're actually teaching teenagers.
The best intellectual preparation for a teacher is to know the content he or she has to teach, to know the pedagogy that can best be used to teach that content, and then to have a repertoire of additional ways to teach that content so that students who struggle can be scaffolded and helped in their learning.
Well, one thing that I did when I was first becoming a teacher, both as a student teacher and as the first couple of years, is I actually sat in on other classes by other teachers. And sometimes there's an advantage to sit on a class that's the same as the one that you teach, because then you can see how they teach it, and that can be a really useful model for you. But also sometimes it's nice to sit in on a class of a teacher who doesn't teach your same subject, because then you're focusing on the teaching and not on the material. And I did both, and I found that was extremely useful.
There has to be that personal commitment to what you're doing, your preparation day to day. I mean, you can take all of the things that you learn in textbooks and in college and in post-college, and it really comes down to working every single day, figuring out your students, figuring out what is it they need to learn, what effective teaching strategies, because you're going to find often that what you thought was a perfect lesson and you really spent hours planning it, it was a dud. You know, the kids didn't learn. You know, your post lesson goals or your tests are showing you that it didn't work.
I think you really need to find your own personality. Sometimes I think with mentoring programs that teachers are created outside of what their personality is. You need to figure out what your personality is and use your strengths. If you're a very charismatic or a funny person, then use humor in your classroom. If you're a person that's really loves to read or write, then use reading and writing. So find out what your strengths are. What is your personality? And use that in your classroom.
One of the big characteristics of a good teacher is that he or she is organized and efficient. If someone has to spend 10 minutes looking for each piece of paper for each kid, you know, things just don't get done in the day. There's got to be time for organization and the creation of kind of an efficient, routine classroom structure.
Excellence in teaching is something that definitely can be developed. Just as we say all children can make progress, all teachers can make progress. All through teaching careers, we move along a continuum from beginning knowledge to hopefully excellence.
I believe so strongly in trying to give students the tools that they need, and by that I mean not only the content, the multiplication tables and the reading knowledge, but really the skills that they need to be successful in the strategies that help us all navigate through life.